Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Welcome to the Worry-Free Retirement with Tony Walker. And now, the host of the Worry-Free Retirement, John Ramsey.
Yes, and welcome once again to the Worry-Free Retirement, the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers like you and I worry less about money. With us now is none other than the author and creator himself, Senior Market Advisors finalist for Advisor of the Year, Mr. Tony Walker. And Tony, before we start on what we're going to talk about today's show, you have been celebrating over the weekend with your family. And I think our audience, our viewing audience, would like to hear the good news and share the joy.
Daughter, the middle child, been dating a young man who we think a lot of, and he had the talk with me a couple of weeks ago. She didn't know what was going on. He said, Mr. Walker, I need to talk to you. And I said, uh-oh, I know what this is all about. So he came over, and I had my bazooka and shotgun just in case. You know, very intimidating, but nice young man. But he said, I'm going to propose. He laid it all out where she attends college, in an area there in the college where a lot of people propose to people. So this past weekend, he did that. His parents and my wife and I went down there and waited for them to return from this area where he proposed, so we knew it was all going, and then we surprised her when they came in. Just a cool event. Very, very cool. I'm just really excited and happy for him.
Well, you mentioned a couple of times that you like him, and as you know, if you have Dad's approval, then you've won the big battle there. So congratulations to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And then we went to a wedding last night, my wife and I, down in Nashville, Tennessee. I live down in the Southern Kentucky area. And that was kind of weird because we knew those people real well. So here's our daughter getting engaged Saturday and then going to a wedding the next night, and it's like, you know, this is what we're going to be doing pretty soon. I mean, it all just starts kind of reality check there. So it's wow.
Well, it's all good news.
Yeah, it is good.
We have more good news for you as well, because you know everyone has social media in their lives now. It seems like we all know what we're doing a little bit on the internet. Well, this man knows much more than I do, and that would be America's favorite financial sidekick, Aaron Orender, is with us. And Aaron, we're going to talk a little social media, correct?
Yeah, we got a lot going on. First and foremost, if you don't know already, Tony Walker Financial has a Facebook page. I created this couple of months ago, and we've been adding things on it regularly, photos, inspirational quotes that Tony likes. We've got videos on there. We've got all kinds of stuff. So what we want you to do is we want you to go to the Tony Walker Financial Facebook page and like it, okay? When you like it, you'll be put into a drawing for one of the all brand new Tony Walker Financial tote bags. So we've got that going on. Now, something that Tony's had for a little while, but people may not know about it as well, is Tony's YouTube channel. We've got a YouTube channel for Tony that's got, again, it's got educational videos on it, it's got snippets from shows, it's got entire shows on it in case you missed it. So just go to YouTube, type in Tony Walker Financial, subscribe to his page, and you'll be getting regularly, updates on the videos.
All right, when it comes to your worry-free retirement, this man is the expert. Thank you very much, Aaron.
He's good, isn't he?
He's very good. He's very, very good. But
that LOL thing, what does that mean again?
I know. He would know. All right. Tony, I wanted to talk to you. I don't think we're out of the woods yet when it comes to the government shutdown. As you know, we're going to have to revisit this here shortly. It seems to me that when you look at the newspapers and on the news, the focus seems to be about money. But you have always taught me that, John, it's not always all about the money. In fact, you have what you call the three-prong approach. And I think this may come into play with this issue. And if you would, first of all, I think explain a little bit about the three-prong approach and how it really can correlate or work with the government and the shutdown and the worry that we have.
Well, the last couple of weeks on the show, John, I really have been hitting on this theme, I guess, of a lack of spiritual, I'll just call it spiritual maturity, seeming to come out of Washington. I think, as you said before the show went on, I think we've exhausted all intellectual resources up there. I mean, nothing is really happening. And it really does concern me with the worry-free retirement, whether it's advisors or politicians or whatever. I think people need to have some sort of spiritual balance in their life. That's first 31 years of my life, I didn't have it. I look back on it and was given advice. You know, I do have it now, quite frankly. I rely on the scriptures a lot. And with that being said, we've been talking the last couple of weeks, and sometimes on this show, I'm not trying to make political statements. I'm trying to encourage people and help them worry less about money. And as we're talking about all this, deep down you question yourself sometimes and say, hey, am I throwing this faith stuff out there too much? Am I throwing the Bible out there too much? Well, lo and behold, it was interesting. This article comes out in the AP, and here's the article's headline, John. Advisors, that's advisors to Obama, boost his faith out into the spotlight. And it talks about the president's faith. And to me, as I read this article, I mean, this was right up there. I was more excited than the announcement for Cash for Clunkers, John. I mean, this was just good stuff. But here's what President Obama said. Sometimes I search Scripture to determine how to best balance my life as a president, as a husband, and a father. And I thought, man, this is good news. I'm excited.
That's out of the book of Tony. I mean, you've always believed this, and you've been very upfront and very straightforward about how important your spirituality is. I think it's encouraging that President Obama's coming forward.
I do too. I think it's very encouraging. And I think, not to say any particular advisor ought to have the faith of Tony Walker, but I think for people thinking about advisors, what's happening here is I want to know more about our president, quite frankly, and his faith. I want to know more about our politicians because that will drive a lot of the decisions. A man who has no faith at all, I'm not confident in their decisions, quite frankly, because they're relying just on themselves. Now, I want to share a scripture if we've got this available because there's a key word in here I want to point out. And this is the word calling, okay? Therefore, the prisoner of the Lord entreats you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which you have been called. Let's keep going. Listen to this, John. Can you imagine if we all walked like this with all humility, gentleness, patience, showing forbearance to one another in love and being diligent? Okay, thank you. Now, I'm sorry. And then we do that. When you do that, you preserve the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace. So when we look at Washington, okay, thank you. You look at how erratic it is and how chaotic it is, and you don't see this, see? So it's evidence that God's Word is true in this area. Now, what I would say there, this word forbearance, calling, I've made some notes here on the word forbearance. The word forbearance means to loosen up. It means humility. It means to really take into account a passion for what you're doing, but it's a calling higher than you. So what I would say is we in the financial world, I want us to feel like we have a calling. My calling is to help savers worry less about money. So when you're meeting with people, folks, let's turn this over to the financial world. I think it's perfectly okay when you're asking a financial advisor about them to ask about their calling. And if somebody really, if you sense that they are what my granddad used to call buck sniffers, if they got into this business just for the money, if a politician's up there just for the money, if anybody's doing a vocation just for the money, to me that's not a calling at all. That's just a vocation to make money. So the way you find out if you've got somebody that has a calling is they're showing forbearance. They're trying to unify things. They're trying to loosen up their grip on what maybe they believe to help others see this as well. So, but back to this, the president's comments here, I'm encouraged. And I love to hear this kind of stuff coming out of Washington because the other stuff coming out hadn't been encouraging at all. So I say good news, great news. And for those of you who believe in the power of prayer, I'd say continue to keep this gentleman in prayer and all the politicians up there because we've got serious problems in our country, John. And this is the answer, what we're talking about right now.
All right, if you've been watching the Worry-Free Retirement, now you know a little bit more about Tony Walker, his spirituality. If you'd like to learn more about perhaps what a saver is, if this applies to you, TonyWalkerFinancial.com. If you'd like to know a lot about Tony, he's going to make it very easy because if you live outside of the Southern Kentucky area, then you can be one of the first 10 people who get online. Just click on Contact Tony. If you do that and leave your name and full address, if you leave that, he'll send you all 3 of his books. Included in that would be The Worry-Free Retirement, Don't Follow the Herd, and The 3 Personalities of Money, all absolutely free. Now, if you live in the southern part of Kentucky, just go see Tony. He'd be glad to autograph a few copies. He'd take care of you, I promise you. But if you live outside of the area, if you're watching this in another city, another market, please, once again, TonyWalkerFinancial.com, and you'll contact Tony. All of your information is needed. Included, of course, would be your address, and Tony will take care of you absolutely free. All right, coming up on the Worry-Free Retirement, we're going to tell savers more about how they can worry less about their money, and we're also going to go with Tony in the trenches. Tony down in the trenches, going to give you some good, strong advice. We'll be right back.
How would you like to find a trusted advisor in your area who practices and preaches the same safe money solutions that I speak of on this program? Well, you can by simply logging on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and clicking on the Find an Advisor link. Once there, just fill out the confidential profile and submit it. This free service is available to savers who are serious about safeguarding their money. So what are you waiting for? Stop worrying and log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
And now it's time for Tony in the Trenches.
Okay, Tony, I've got a question. It involves Social Security. I'm 62 years of age, and I know I'll have to wait till I'm 66 to draw full Social Security, but I have also been reading that there's other options to wait past your full Social Security age. And I was just wondering if you could give me a little bit of insight on how's the best way to handle drawing Social Security when you reach full, your full Social Security age.
Wow. Tony, that Social Security seems to be getting more and more complex. And that's what I love about your process is you're on top of all these things. I can relax. I'm worry-free. You handle it.
What I'd like to share with folks out there, there's a lot of workshops, and especially if you're even outside the Southern Kentucky viewing area, you've probably noticed this, folks, more and more workshops about Social Security, when to take it, and that type of thing. And again, I'm not saying don't go to these kind of workshops. First of all, we must say, if you're going to these kind of workshops, you got to remember to make a decision on Social Security, John, somebody is going to have to look at your information. As I like to say, you're going to have to take your financial clothes off in front of somebody. Sure. So there is no way anybody at a workshop could tell you when to take it. Now, with that being said, remember, our advisors throughout the country, if you can go to our website here, let's go to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and call that up. If you're in any part of the area outside Southern Kentucky, if you want to go down to find an advisor in your area, this is real important because all of these advisors have some brand new what we call Social Security Optimizer software. So what I'm getting ready to talk about in this example, these slides I'm going to show you, they can run a lot of these calculations. What you do is you click on Find an Advisor in your area, and you'll fill out all your information and make a note there for Social Security Maximizing software, and they will get that information to you free of charge. Okay, so what I've done, John, if we're ready in there, I've got a couple of slides worked out. One of the big strategies now is this idea of kind of file and suspend we talk about, and these are things coming up in a lot of these workshops. Just one thing to be thinking about. Again, don't watch this slide, folks, and run out and do this. Ultimately, we always tell people before you make any election, I always recommend that you go to the Social Security office, have them look up your account, and verify these types of numbers before you do it. But this is generally how it works. Let's take Bob and Mary, a husband and wife, and let's just say at age 66, if they drew their Social Security, Bob would get $2,500, Mary would get $1,500. Now, John, notice, what if they waited? That number goes up a lot. Look at that. If Bob waited till age 70 to draw Social Security, it's $3,400 a month. Mary, if she waited, would be over $2,000 a month, a pretty big jump, right?
Yes.
Now, the problem with that is, obviously, if you waited, here's one of many considerations, folks. This would take hours to go through, but obviously, if you waited, and this would be my luck, John, I waited to 70, let's say I'm Bob, I draw for 6 months at $3,400 and die, guess what? I didn't get any Social Security for the past 5 years, so that's part of the dilemma. But let's just kind of go through this. So what we could do here, Mary could suspend her benefits. Look at this. If Bob and Mary file at 66, Bob gets his $2,500, Mary gets her $1,500. Benefits remain the same going forward, except they would go up for cost of living. So that's what they would get. Let's go to the next slide. All right. What about if Bob, though, suspends? What he does literally is he goes to the Social Security office at age 66, John, and he says, I want to file for benefits, but I'm suspending those benefits. Then Mary, his wife, this is a little trick, you can do this, it's perfectly legal. Mary goes back and she files what's called a restricted benefit. So even though Bob is not drawing his $2,500, she draws $1,250 now. Okay? Then this is what's kind of wild. Then when Bob hits 70, he goes back to drawing $3,400, and Mary then would get $2,040 a month. Okay? Is that the last slide there? I can't remember that. No, that's it. Okay, good. So what we see here, we see all these different things going on, and what's happening is advisors around the country are just bombarding consumers with all these different ideas and everything. And again, I say no problem. Go to these workshops, try to learn this stuff, but you have to understand these are great marketing workshops too. Advisors are trying to get in front of people to look at the whole gamut of things. And what I would say to people watching this show is you got to ask yourself, who are these people? I don't even know who they may be, and I get 10 or 12 of these invitations a week for different seminars. Folks, we have advisors throughout the country. If you are getting ready to retire, thinking about retiring, or it doesn't even matter if you've already drawn Social Security, you're trying to think about the tax ramifications of Social Security. I'm encouraging you to go to our website. If you're outside the Southern Kentucky area, obviously if you're in Southern Kentucky, I can handle this for you personally if you'd like to meet with me. But if you want to find an advisor in your area that understands the Social Security rules and can sit down with you at no cost or obligation, I encourage you to go to Find an Advisor in your area and click on the Find an Advisor. Also, as we said earlier, these advisors can personally even deliver, if you like, the 3 free books that we're offering for the first 10 people that go to the website. In all of those areas, all 3 of my books absolutely free. The good thing about working with these folks, John, they're just like us. They're not going to be high pressure. They're going to go through a whole scenario with you, make sure it's right for you before they recommend anything whatsoever.
All right. Tony, you're in the trenches. We talk about that often, and you have interesting conversations with folks about their worry-free retirement every day. In fact, we have Jan from Louisville on the phone, and apparently, have you had an interesting conversation with her lately, Tony?
You know, this, what a lot of people don't realize that have watched this show, and of course, I've been in the Louisville, Kentucky area with this show for well over 5 years. We take calls and all that. People don't realize this, how many calls and emails I get following the show, and I'm perfectly happy to try to answer those. By the way, if you've emailed me and it's maybe taken a couple of days for me to get back, I'm trying to run a personal practice too out in the trenches, so I will get back to you. If it's been a couple of days, send me another email. Say, hey Tony, what are you doing, man? I wanted to hear a response. I'll be happy to get back. This particular individual really caught my attention, and what I asked her to do, I'm going to go over to the whiteboard. We're going to have a conversation. We're probably going to have to go into the next segment. This is an actual conversation we had. This is the kind of conversation when people are talking to advisors they should have. Sure. So I think this is going to be educational as well. So let's see, first of all, Jan, are you on the line with us?
I am on the line.
Okay. Now I'm going to kind of walk over to the whiteboard here. They're going to have to move around. Hang in there, Jan. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself. Like I said, remember you're on in about 9 states here, so we don't want you giving away too much personal information. So we just know you as Jan from Louisville. You're a real person. This is a real situation. But if you would, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm 62 years old, and I've worked at a number of places in my life and have been, I guess, fortunate enough to had a pension at several of those companies. So now that I'm 62, I last year received a pension buyout from one of those companies, and this year I've received another letter with another pension buyout.
So interesting. So these pension buyouts are coming along, and I think that was what precipitated your original call, was what to do with the pension buyout. But I think if we can go into detail, why don't you tell us a little bit about your history or past with a particular advisor who recommended a lot of annuities, and
yes,
explain when you went back to see them and maybe you felt a little disconcerted about the additional recommendation of more annuities. So can you tell us a little bit about how you met this particular individual, the recommendations for annuities, your understanding, and then and so forth in terms of explaining what happened after that?
Okay, I attended a dinner on fixed annuities, and I had a couple of 401ks that I did roll into two separate fixed annuity accounts. And then I actually also purchased another one. I'm not exactly sure when I did that or why, but so now I have 3 separate fixed annuity accounts. With the first buyout, pension buyout I bought what was called an annuity for life, with a certain amount of money that I can withdraw from that account on a monthly basis, which I have not started doing yet. But when I called to ask them about the current pension buyout, they suggested that I once again do the annuity for life. But my concern was, do I have too many annuities now?
And what was your concern there? What was your gut telling you?
Well, my gut was telling me I have enough annuities. And, you know, I know with these annuities I can only draw 10% of these a year. And, you know, for my circumstance right now, that's probably fine. I don't need the money right at this time, and I try not to withdraw from this money, as this money does have to last me for most of my lifetime. But there was just something telling me that maybe it's time to break away from annuities. There's got to be something else that I need to diversify and do. And I think that when I was told maybe another fixed annuity, I started feeling like maybe this wasn't the best advice. And so that's where your gut feelings come in, and that's why I called you.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think what we were talking about too, so in the meantime, my advice was to get that money in what I called a liquid position. So since it was a buyout, and folks, hopefully if you're watching this, some of you are experiencing this right now, you're being offered buyouts and you're not sure what to do. My advice to you, Jan, if you'll recall, was to get that in a liquid position so that you could access the money.
Right.
And one of my concerns, Jan, and for one of my concerns with a lot of people out there, as these annuities are getting more and more popular, you know, I've done over 1,500 of these annuities since 9/11. I'm very familiar with the products. They are great products for savers. But what happens is we get advisors out there that get a little carried away, and I do not recommend, I'm really cautious of telling people to put all of your money in these because of access. And I don't know if you've experienced this, Jan, but as we talked about having access to money, I think you just felt a little more liberated in knowing, number one, that maybe, hey, you were right, your gut was telling you that, hey, maybe that's too much money in annuities. But secondly, I think what you're saying is you want to have some money that is completely accessible in case things change. Is that correct?
Exactly. That is exactly right. And, you know, the one thing about the annuities that I have, I read some of the brochure that you had online, and I was noticing that there are annuities where instead of 10% a year, if you don't take it, say, in year 2013, that in 2014 you can get 20%. Well, the annuities that I have, that is not the case. I still am only locked in to only getting 10% a year, and if I choose not to take it the following year, it's still just 10%. And I think as an individual here who's not a financial guru, it's important for people to ask the right questions.
Okay. Well, Jan, I appreciate that so much. Appreciate you called in. We got to wrap it up. I tell you what, when we come back, we got to wrap up this segment. John, let's show them where we can get that annuity booklet she's talking about as well.
We'll do that. That's right. You're watching the Worry-Free Retirement, helping savers worry less about their money. We'll be right back.
For nearly 30 years, I've made it my life's work to help savers worry less about money. And now I invite you to personally contact me to discuss your situation to see if I can help you. It's very easy. You just log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and click on the Meet with Tony link. Or, if you like, you can attend one of my free financial workshops. As always, there's never any cost or obligation to meet and discuss your situation in private. So what are you waiting for? Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement. Tony Walker is here. He is the author and creator of the Worry-Free Retirement, helping you as a saver, worry less about your money. All right, Mr. Walker, you know you get a lot of emails at TonyWalkerFinancial.com. If you have any questions, you can tell he's a great resource. TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Just hit contact Tony. All right, Tony, what do you have for us today?
Well, and I was going to say one more time before you leave that. That's all right. We got that. Remind them, too, we can go back to the website in a second. That annuity booklet she was talking about, yes. Annuities 101, click on that. It's a free download. But basically, here was an interesting question. My father is attempting to set things in order and wondering how we can help. He's concerned that the beneficiaries will have to pay a fortune in taxes, wants to avoid probate if at all possible. He's considering putting money into trusts. He's heard about beneficiary IRAs. We are unfamiliar with this, et cetera, et cetera. You know why I showed this email, John? Do you know how many people have these same questions? You got a lot thrown in there. Tax questions, beneficiary information, trust they're looking at.
Sure.
And probably there's not that many tax issues associated with the state taxes because the limits are so high. So again, what I would suggest doing, folks, if you find yourself in these dilemmas right here where you don't know where to turn to, this is why we've got the show on. If you're in the Southern Kentucky area, I can help with these types of questions. We have people all around the country from the viewing areas now that are assigned to help with these types of questions. So what I would suggest, you've got to find a retirement specialist at some point. Sure. Too many different angles here to deal with. After meeting with a retirement specialist, a good retirement specialist will bring in other authority figures if needed, such as an attorney and such as some of these other practical people. So I would go to, we can put the website up there again, TonyWalkerFinancial.com. If you're in the Southern Kentucky area, just click on Meet with Tony. If you're outside the Southern Kentucky viewing area, please click on Find an Advisor. Also, when you click on Find an Advisor, remember the first 10 people that go to the website from each station, we've got 9 throughout the country, will get all 3 of my books absolutely free. These books are a wonderful way to find out more about my philosophy, my approach to money, and also find out about this unique thing we've created here called the 3 Personalities of Money and why we can help savers worry less about money.
Lots of good information there. Again, we encourage you, if you are a saver, and I think you are, believe me, if you're watching the show and you say, that sounds like me, you are a saver, TonyWalkerFinancial.com and click on Find an Advisor in your area. Just say, find an advisor. All right. Tony, I want to thank you very much. Look forward to next week. Lots of great information. We'll be right back with the Worry-Free Retirement, helping savers worry less about their money, and it's the only show like it in the country. We'll be right back.
How would you like to find a trusted advisor in your area who practices and preaches the same safe money solutions that I speak of on this program? Well, you can by simply logging on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and clicking on the Find an Advisor link. Once there, just fill out the confidential profile and submit it. This free service is available to savers who are serious about safeguarding their money. So what are you waiting for? Stop worrying and log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Welcome to the Worry-Free Retirement. About ready to head out of here, but before we go, Tony, I want to ask you what's coming up next week, because this has been some good information today. What do we have next week?
Excited about next week's show. We're going to talk about new solutions for long-term care insurance, a way to have your cake and eat it too when it comes to long-term care insurance. That's next week. You'll want to stay tuned for that.
All righty. Make sure you watch the Worry-Free Retirement, helping savers worry less about their money. The only show like it in the country. We'll see you next week on the Worry-Free Retirement.
You've been watching the Worry-Free Retirement with financial advisor Tony Walker. To ask Tony a question or to find an advisor in your area, log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com.